Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Ace in the Hole is a movie that came out in 1951, written and directed by Billy Wilder, a movie that I came across while searching for Sunset Boulevard, which is another of his movies that I've heard great things, and I've been trying to and making an effort to go back and rewatch classic films. I specifically signed up for Criterion Collection, their Criterion streaming service, specifically to have access to Criterion, probably a collection of some of the best films ever made. It's where I found this, where I came across this film. Did not watch Sunset Boulevard, obviously, but decided to watch this. Didn't really know much going into it. I think I read the first sentence. A frustrated former big city journalist now stuck working for an Albuquerque newspaper. I stopped reading it there. I'm like, okay, interesting. The decade, the 50s, some interesting movies coming out of there. And I've really just been on a kick watching a lot of classic films. So you have the star, Kirk Douglas, is this cool reporter from New York, this big shot reporter. There's this scene where he lights a match on a typewriter, like the drum of the typewriter. He closes it, and that strikes his match to light a cigarette. Very cool reporter. Has a really good sales pitch for himself as well, which apparently he's gotten good at because he's been to a bunch of different newspapers before landing himself in New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico. And he is probably one of the major things of this movie that doesn't hold up and isn't really necessary, but at the same time is still highlights what was going on in the 50s, how people acted in the 50s. And that is the casual, if not overt, racism towards Native Americans. Throughout, is kind of a theme of this film, of the plot of this film, is using that fear and that racism against Native Americans, using that in order to fulfill a need. And so that's maybe not the best, but it fits. It's like you can't pretend that racist people didn't exist in the 1950s, because we're living in 2022, and boy, are those people still around, and boy, have they just gotten really comfortable being vocal about it. But anyway, our main character is a bit racist, so not the greatest dude, but he's kind of like an anti-hero, because was fired from all of these other news organizations because of he's a degenerate. He's good at writing, but he's horrible at everything else in life. So he's not the greatest guy. I'm sure at the time he was like this. But his character. Obviously, I'm going to spoil this movie. Go watch it. It is a story that could have been made today. It is very much a movie about the power of media and how capitalism isn't necessarily the best social system to have in place if you want just good, accurate news of what's going on, because this movie is very much the dangers of capitalism. This movie is how this cool reporter takes a situation of a man who is, I guess, illegally excavating pieces of Native American culture out of a mine in order to sell it at his trading post, right? So he's desecrating a burial area of Native Americans in order to sell their stuff, to resell their stuff. And while he's digging out a pot, he gets buried under a bunch, the old mine gives way a bit, and he's trapped. And the reporter is out on his way to go cover some kind of rattlesnake hunt thing. But on his way, he stumbles across this thing that's going on and goes in himself. Kirk Douglas's character goes in himself to go with a camera. He has a photographer there with him. His name is Chuck Tatum. Goes in to see what's going on as some kind of expert. But everybody else in the town's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know. Because they're all, small desert town in Albuquerque. Definitely the visuals reminded me a lot of the Palm Springs area, especially when you see old pictures. I mean, definitely east end of the valley is very similar to this. The high desert is very similar to this. So the aesthetic of Albuquerque, New Mexico looks very similar to Southern California when you get out of the cities. But so he goes in and he sees this guy is trapped and he forms a rapport with him, trying to get the story out of him. Who is he? What is he doing there? And he had been talking to the photographer about good news doesn't sell. It's all bad news. Bad news sells the best. Good news is no news. And that's very similar to today. Like, news organizations loved Trump in office. Like, their ratings were probably skyrocketing. And now that we have Biden in there, I guarantee their numbers are sagging because he's kind of doing good. I mean, compared to the other guy, he's not exciting. He's not a crazy person riding a nuclear bomb down to earth. He's like an old man just trying to do good stuff, but really still doing stuff for the wealthy people and institutions, not the people itself. But that being said, if it bleeds, it leads kind of a thing. The Many Faces is an ongoing abstract ink portrait series that I started many years ago. I release a new face every day, but go to inspireddisorder.com to check them out. So many available. But as a listener to The Ray Taylor Show, you can save 10% when you use coupon code INSPIRED when you check out. So go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF, that stands for The Many Faces. Go check them out, browse the entire collection, and when you decide on a piece, or maybe multiple pieces, make sure you use coupon code INSPIRED when you check out, and you'll save 10% as a big thank you for checking out my work, for collecting my work, and for listening to The Ray Taylor Show. And with that said, let's get back to the show. And he wants to turn this, obviously, he doesn't think he's going to be in Albuquerque that long. He wants to, he needs another story. He needs another story to get back on track and get picked up by another big newspaper. So he's using this, Tatum is using this as a situation to try and get out of there. And he's already been at this newspaper a year, far longer than he thought he would be. So he's ready to go and get out. Get out of the small town, work for a big paper again, where he talks about how, he turns news stories into spectacles, how he makes stories where there are none, makes them more interesting because they want to sell. We live in a capitalist society. It's not about accuracy. It's about what sells. Boring stories don't sell. And he's really good at making entertaining stories out of reality. And that is what he's doing in this. Because given the chance of getting this guy out immediately, and he's taking charge. I mean, he goes into this town, he goes to check on him, and he's acting like the guy who has all the answers. He's acting like the guy that's going to organize everything and get this guy out of there. And because he has that much power, he knows that he can stretch it out. This is his opportunity to stretch out just a small story into a big spectacle. Really give him the human experience. The human experience, the human story, human life, turning it into dollars, because that's what counts in this country. Money is far more valuable in this country than humans. So any opportunity for somebody to make money off the back of another human, especially another human suffering, that's what this movie is about. Is about how capitalism can turn a small mistake, a small tragedy, into a giant circus, literally turning this situation into a giant circus, where it gets to the point where they had 3,000 people, spectators outside waiting for this guy to be drilled out, because instead of just getting that guy, just shoring up the walls of this cave and just pulling him out normal, they decide to drill down because it's going to take longer. And it gives this reporter more time to, put out a new story every day, increase circulation, increase news sales. He's getting back on the map. He's making he's starting a fire, and he's getting it growing and growing, to where there's 3,000 people, spectators out there. They're selling admission. Admission prices started at 25 cents, and now we're at 50 cents. You got musicians showing up, having their songs, their tribute songs to this guy that's stuck in the cave. You have a literal circus showing up to entertain and sell food and have entertainment for all these people who are waiting outside this cave for this guy who is slowly dying inside the cave. Slowly dying. You have Chuck Tatum is like the only guy that goes in and out, right? It's beautiful. I mean, he's like all of these anti-hero characters, like a Breaking Bad guy. Like he's not doing good, but like on some level, it's like impressive that he's able to actually do all of these things, convincing them that he's the only one that can go in there and communicate with them. Even though this guy is in there for doing something wrong, from like robbing from burial grounds from Native American, and he uses the racism of Native Americans to write his story. Because his story is all about this guy who feels like the guy who's stuck in the thing, Lou, I think his name is. Right? Lou? Of course it's not going to be on here. Or Leo? Maybe it's Leo. His idea, his explanation for why he got stuck is because he was cursed by the Native Americans. Which all of that stuff is like, that's all, it's all white fear mongering stuff that they do for every non-white, is like, oh, there's like curses and hexes and like they're evil and they're manipulating life in a way that's causing white man pain. But he uses that as like the story of like, oh, Native American curse buries man alive, fighting for his life because of those evil Native Americans that cursed him. So even the racism of it, and using racism to sell, I mean, in a lot of ways it's Fox News who uses racism as a way to scare white people. Oh, the caravan's coming to the border. It's all the same stuff. And this is 1951. Makes me really want to watch more Billy Wilder stuff. Because it's like, it's so ridiculous how little humanity has changed in this country. How white supremacy is like somehow so impervious to anything that it has its claws so deep in society that the amount of white supremacy and racism has only mildly changed from 1951 to 2022. And I think a lot of them just kind of pretended and were quiet, and then Trump got in office and just empowered everybody to just spew as much and as often they could of all of the hate they have. So now we see it like everywhere. Everywhere, just like disgusting. And this movie does that. And it's like a hell for the guy that's trapped, for Leo that's trapped in this mine. Because he's being used. He's being exploited. And he's in hell because of it. He's got this constant pounding from the drill above him, day and night. Like, I think 5 days, 6 days, the dude's like, I'm going to die, get a priest. And then they realize, and then some other minor guy comes in, some guy that's, kind of more familiar with how mines work. And he's like, you guys should have just shored up that mine and you could have gotten him out like the next day. But of course, the reporter orchestrated this. There's a reason why they're going from the top with a drill, because he wanted to stretch it out. But what I love about this movie is also tragic. It's that they get to a situation where the guy in hell, buried in this little cave of hell, he knows he's not going to make it. And they don't have enough time to shore up the thing and get him out. They can't. It's not that they don't have time. The mine walls won't take it because of the drilling. So the only way now, because they stretched it out and did it the way they did it, is to drill. But the drilling won't be done for 24 hours, and this guy has 12 hours to live. So what happens in this movie that doesn't happen in reality, that never happens in reality, what happens in reality is that this reporter gets a huge career from this. Regardless of survival or death, obviously survival is what he wants because it's a better story. But even though in this movie, spoilers, things don't go that way necessarily, what happens in this movie to the bad guy, this reporter, Kirk Douglas, great performance as Chuck Tatum, when it doesn't go his way, when his story doesn't end the way he wants it to end, he feels massive amounts of regret. Right? That's the part that people, maybe some people do, but there's a lot of people who have made a lot of money off of the backs of tragedy that probably go to sleep like a baby. There are countless war criminals out there that have profited from nonstop wars, that sleep and live a life of luxury and have no problems. This guy acted like a human. He acted like a human that realized he made a mistake. He acted like somebody that feels bad for the bad things he did. He has remorse. He has empathy. Maybe too little too late. Join Inspired Disorder Plus today. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus to join. Membership includes members-only discounts and deals. You get access to the Ray Taylor Show completely ad-free, as well as bonus episodes. You get access to the complete live painting archive. You also get access to every single podcast ever produced by Inspired Disorder, hosted by Ray Taylor. You get access to Ray Taylor's personal blog, as well as the opportunity to ask me any questions. So if you want to start a podcast, you're into art, ask me anything. And so many more things are being added every day to Inspired Disorder Plus. So sign up today, become a member, head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today. And it ends great. I mean, he basically spirals out. He realized that this thing that he was trying to do to get his career ended up backfiring in the biggest way. He ended up costing a life. Gets back into drinking, which is something that, his relationship with alcohol was very interesting also. Like when things were going good and he was on a roll, he's like, I am waiting on that. But once that upward momentum dies off and things go bad, he goes down that rabbit hole. And I can relate to that for sure. And the way this movie ends with him literally crashing down facing the camera, passing out, going into the old newsroom in Albuquerque, going to the guy that owns the paper who despite the fact that was profiting exponentially off of the story that this dude was creating, was still disgusted at the fact that he was making this money. He was another unrealistic thing is somebody in charge of a media company that actually has humanity within them. somebody who's not profit driven, but actually cares about putting out accurate news for the people. Like, there are definitely some unrealistic things now, especially in 2022, that just, it doesn't seem like exist at all. Like, when it comes to being successful in a capitalist system, you cannot have compassion for humans. It is not profitable to have compassion for humans. But in the story, the guy who owns the paper does, despite the profits Tatum was coming in with. And at the end, Tatum goes back in a similar fashion to when he was selling himself to the paper initially. He's saying he's a $1,000 reporter who's willing to work for free. Because he's like, he knows he's washed. It's like he's done. He's done. I think people found out that and I think also he's got some morality to him. But he falls down, collapses right into camera. And it's pretty great. But yeah, overall, an amazing movie. Amazing movie. And it's like, while I was watching it, and I was like, oh, this is where this is going. Like, oh, he's turning this into a circus. And then not like 10, 20 minutes later, a literal circus shows up. It's like, whoa, this movie is saying something, man. There's no way a movie like this would come out. Hour and 51 minutes, so not that long. An anti-capitalism movie? Shh. Come on. Does that even exist? I can't even think of a movie that had like a similar messaging. I mean, in some ways, Squid Game is not really anti-capitalism, but it kind of illustrates capitalism in a new way. But yeah, this one, as far as taking down media, having a very critical opinion about media and what that means to have that kind of power in a capitalist society. It's like turning the movie 127 Hours into like a reality show almost. Like it was in so many ways that type of disgusting culture that we live in still to this day. I think that's it. Yeah. Great movie. Check it out. Ace in the Hole. Originally titled Until the Circus Comes to Town or something like that. Let me see if I can find the original title. Man. I saw it on Criterion, and they have a little, they have some, the thing I love about the Criterion, The Big Carnival is what it was originally called. They changed it from Ace in the Hole to The Big Carnival to increase box office take of the film. It didn't work. On top of that, Wilder's next picture, Stalag 17, was a hit, and he expected a share of the picture's profits. Paramount's accountants told him that since the picture lost money, the money it lost would be subtracted from his profits. Ugh, Paramount. Disgusting. So I think it was originally came out Ace in the Hole and wasn't doing well, so they renamed it. I think similarly to Live, Die, Repeat and Edge of Tomorrow. Although I think one title was an overseas title that they just adapted. Either way, I mean, that could be similar to this one too. Either way, check it out. Ace in the Hole. It's available currently, I looked it up, on the Criterion channel, which if you love great movies, new and old, it's a must. Or for free, I'm sure there's ads in it, but Pluto TV has it available. But check out Just Watch app to see where it's playing, because I recommend it. It's great. For an old movie that packs a modern-day punch, sadly, that's still relevant, I highly recommend it. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.